All right, so looking to polish up your everyday English? Well, lucky you, we did a deep dive into this guide. Everyday English, practical language skills for daily use. And it's packed with useful stuff.
Yeah, totally. I was really interested in how it went beyond just grammar, like
Yeah.
actually using language, out in the real world.
Exactly. Less about, perfect grammar and more about confidently navigating life.
Right.
Right. Ordering a coffee, asking directions in a new city, even nailing that big presentation at work.
Totally. And it's for everyone. The guide emphasizes that. Native speaker or learning English doesn't matter. We can all benefit from better communication skills.
So the guide starts off making a case for why everyday English matters. What do you think about that section?
Well, it really hit me, how they talked about the impact of strong communication skills. I mean, it's not just expressing yourself clearly, it's about building relationships, navigating daily life, your career, even getting information easier. It affects so much.
It's like this underlying current that influences everything, right? The guide then goes into vocabulary building, and I gotta say, I was kind of surprised by their approach.
Oh, what surprised you?
Well, they suggest focusing on the most common words and phrases first. They say mastering just 600 words can cover a huge chunk of daily conversation. Seems almost too simple.
I can see why that might be surprising, but it makes sense,
Huh.
When you think about it, how often do we use like really complex words day to day? Not that often.
That's true. So focusing on high-frequency words is like targeting the core of communication.
Exactly. It's not that a wide vocabulary isn't important, but it's about priorities.
Yeah.
Lay that foundation first. And they also talk about learning in context, not just memorizing lists.
Yeah. I remember studying Spanish. We'd spend hours on vocab lists, but I'd freeze up in conversations. I had the words, but I didn't really get how to see them.
That happens a lot. Context is key because it shows you the little things, how to use words. Think about run, for example. So
Mhm.
many meanings: run a marathon, a business, run for office. Oh, that's a great example. I never thought about it that way. So it's not just the definition, but understanding how it works, in different situations.
Exactly. And the guide says to like immerse yourself in real English content, articles, podcasts, actual conversations to get those nuances.
It's like learning by osmosis,
Right.
picking it up naturally.
Exactly. And now, even with good vocabulary, there's more to it. We have to actually listen, understand each other. They have some techniques for that too.
And I gotta say, those techniques are good for airway conversation, not just language learning.
Oh, totally. Things like eye contact, not interrupting, and
Right.
paraphrasing to make sure you're on the same page. It shows you're really listening, no matter the language.
Right. The guide also talks about using music and podcasts to train your ear to different accents and slang. What do you think about that?
I think it's brilliant. Engaging, easy to do, and you get exposed to all the different ways people speak English. You start picking up those little things, the pronunciation, intonation, even vocab. I can see how that would be super helpful, especially now, with globalization, talking to people from all over.
Exactly. It's not just understanding, it's appreciating the richness of the language, all the variations.
Speaking of richness, the guide also tackles pronunciation, which can be tricky for people.
Yeah, it can be a bit intimidating, but they have some really practical advice. One that I liked was mimicking native speakers, like really paying attention to how they make sounds.
Like shadowing.
Yes, it might feel weird at first, but it helps you develop muscle memory for the sounds. Another tip, and this one can be tough, is recording yourself.
Oh, I get that. Not everyone likes listening to themselves, but it gives good feedback, right?
It does. You become aware of your own speech, where you might be stumbling, and track your progress.
Like a personal coach.
Hmm?
The guide also says practicing with partners or joining speaking groups. What do you think about those?
Fantastic. It's about finding safe spaces to practice, make mistakes and get feedback. Learning works best in a supportive environment.
Right. It takes the pressure off, lets you experiment with the language, play with it, make it your own.
Exactly. Now, they also talk about reading strategies to improve comprehension. What did you take away from that section?
Well, one thing that stuck with me was choosing material that, matches your interests, your reading level. Makes it more fun, less scary.
Totally. If you're forcing yourself to read something boring or too hard, it'll feel like a chore. But when you're into it, it's a natural way to learn.
Right. And they talk about active reading, like skimming for main ideas before the details and taking notes as you go.
Those are good for any reading, not just language learning. It's about going beyond just reading and actually engaging with the text.
Exactly. It's about understanding making connections, internalizing it. Now, they also have a whole section on writing, which I think gets forgotten a lot when we talk about everyday English.
Yeah, you're right. Writing is a big part of communication. And they say to make it a daily habit, even small things.
Like journaling, writing down ideas, even trying creative writing, just getting comfortable expressing yourself in writing.
Exactly. And as you get better, you'll find it easier to write emails, reports, even creative stuff.
They also talk about understanding different styles, like knowing when to use slang versus formal language.
That's super important. Imagine emailing your boss like you text your friends. Could be awkward.
Right. Knowing how to adjust your style depending on who you're talking to, that's key for good communication.
And that comes with practice, seeing different kinds of writing.
Now, what really impressed me is how they break down skills for specific situations. It's like a roadmap for the real world.
It really is. It's like, okay, you want to master everyday English. Here's how you handle those everyday things.
It's like having all the tools ready for anything. Imagine, like, ordering food in a foreign country confidently, or explaining your symptoms to a doctor, even if you're not fluent.
That's the power of these skills. It can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. It lets you connect with people, try new things, and stand up for yourself in any situation. Now, learning a language has its challenges. What does the guide say about overcoming those hurdles?
I think it starts with, the right attitude.
Like knowing you're going to mess up along the way.
Yeah. You're going to make mistakes, but they're actually good. They're how you learn.
It's about, like, changing how you see it. Mistakes aren't failures. They're steps forward.
The guide also talks about starting small, like pick challenges you can handle, then make them harder as you go.
So, no TED Talks in a new language after a week of Duolingo.
Right. Set realistic goals, celebrate the small wins.
And patience is key too, I bet. It takes time to really learn a language, become fluent.
Totally. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Now, grammar. That can be a real pain point for people. What's the guide say about those grammar hurdles?
They say review and practice regularly, especially the rules that trip people up.
Like irregular verbs. Or using a and the, that always gets me.
Exactly. And they warn about false friends, words that look the same in English and your language, but mean different things.
Oh, I can see how that would cause problems. Got an example?
Sure. In Spanish, embarazada looks like embarrassed, but it means pregnant. Imagine mixing those up.
Wow, yeah, that's a good one. So don't just go by how words look. Gotta understand what they really mean.
Exactly. What I like about this guide is it goes beyond general tips and gives you specific situations.
Right, like, okay, you want to master everyday English? Here's your playbook.
Let's start with the basics, social stuff, like greetings, saying goodbye, introducing yourself, small talk.
Simple stuff, but using the right phrases makes a big difference in how people see you.
Huge difference. Like you don't say good morning to your friend the same way you do to your boss.
Exactly. And then there's small talk, which can be tough when you're learning.
Oh, yeah, for sure. When I started learning English, I felt so awkward trying to make small talk. Like, what do I even say?
The guide has some good tips for that, like sticking to safe topics. Weather, hobbies, stuff in the news.
It's all about finding things you both have in common and keeping the conversation going.
And those skills are useful at work, too.
Absolutely. Writing emails, reports, being in meetings, you gotta be clear and concise.
They even give tips for presentations, which could be scary even for native speakers.
Oh, for sure. But imagine giving a presentation confidently, even if English isn't your first language.
That's a game changer. It opens up so many doors. And of course, travel. Got to talk about travel, one of my favorite things.
Right. The guide covers a ton of travel stuff. Asking for directions, booking a hotel, ordering food, talking to locals.
It's about feeling comfortable in a new place, experiencing the culture, connecting with people.
And don't forget shopping. Knowing how to ask about stuff, compare prices, even handle returns makes it way easier.
It's about feeling confident, in control, even if you're somewhere new.
Then there's healthcare. You need good communication there.
Being able to explain what's wrong and understand what the doctor says, that's so important.
It shows how everyday English, these basic skills, can affect even the most important parts of our lives.
This guide really focuses on actually using the language, not just the theory.
Yeah, it's not about memorizing lists and rules. It's about using those things to live your life, reach your goals.
And that's what makes it so helpful and different.
It helps you use English confidently, effectively, no matter the situation.
So we've talked about vocabulary, listening, pronunciation, writing confidently.
But the real magic happens when you take all that and use it in your daily life.
Chatting with friends, giving a killer presentation, exploring a new country, everyday English makes it all possible.
And it's a journey. It never really ends.
It's about learning, growing, pushing yourself out of your comfort
And
zone.
having fun with it, most importantly.
So, if you're ready to take your everyday English to the next level, this guide is a great starting point.
Tons of tips, strategies, resources, all to help you communicate better.
But here's something to think about. Beyond the tips and tricks, what personal qualities help people really master everyday English?
Oh, that's a good one to think about.
Wanting to explore the language, finding new words, figuring out the culture behind it all.
It's like instead of just memorizing, you're discovering stuff, like a language archaeologist or something.
And with that curiosity comes, being okay with messing up, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
It is. No one learns perfectly right away. It's about like accepting those slip-ups and learning from them.
Think about learning to ride a bike. You'll fall a few times before you get it, but each time you learn something and then boom, you're riding like a pro.
That's a great way to put it. It's that growth mindset, you know? Messing up isn't failing, it's pushing yourself.
Exactly. And resilience is important too, that ability to bounce back from the tough parts.
There'll be times when it feels impossible, like the grammar's too hard or you just can't say that one word right. But that's where you see how dedicated you are. And pushing through those moments, that's what gets you to mastery.
Oh, and we can't forget humor. Being able to laugh at yourself those times you mispronounce something or get the grammar all mixed up.
Language learning can be humbling, you know? You'll say some silly stuff by accident, but if you can laugh about it, it makes it easier.
It's like not taking yourself too seriously.
Mm.
Remember, the journey is just as important as the destination.
And what a journey it is. Mastering everyday English, it opens up so much. You connect with all kinds of people, experience new cultures, express yourself in ways you never thought you could.
Like you said, a superpower. It lets you navigate the world confidently.
In this guide, Everyday English, it's like a map for that journey. Gives you the tools to become a better communicator.
But like we said, it's more than just the tools. It's about those personal qualities, being curious, being resilient, being okay with making mistakes. That's what unlocks the real power of language.
So as you start your own language learning adventure, stay curious, embrace the challenges, and never forget the joy of discovering new things.
Who knows? You might even learn some new things about yourself along the way.
That's something to think about. And with that, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into everyday English. We hope it's inspired you to continue exploring the amazing world of language and communication. Until next time.